Julie here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and we're in the energy readings of the aftermath of the full moon. And this is, for the coming 2 weeks, are going to be a time of purification. And I do not mean this in a Puritan way. So, there are a lot of people that are triggered and angered by misconception. And there are a lot of people that are coming up with messages that they come from certain contexts and they don't know the differences in the contexts through which people receive messages. Okay? Now, for many of you, collective, it was required to relax a lot of preconceptions that you yourself could have had, whether it's scientifically. In a previous video, I talked about how I was in academia, addicted to coffee, and later learning about energy crystals and learning to connect with those completely by chance. So as I was kind of thinking and really pondering about that and how much I myself had to relax a lot of thoughts and preconceptions that I could have had, and how there are certain things, particularly with the Saturn Neptune, they are beyond the trajectory that we would predict. For example, when I was just born, I was born in 1984, and it would be around the 1990s that the Soviet Union would fall. And then at age 12, I came to my mother very innocently and told my mother, Mama, what if people just had the resources there for people that need them, and then people, whatever they need, they could enjoy those resources, and whatever they can provide, they would provide. And my mother looks at me and said, this is communism. And she had this stern, angry tone. And I was this 12 years old child, and I was like, okay. It didn't explain anything to me. I was like being scolded. And and later I learned about capitalism, and I'm like, that's very interesting. It's almost like the same, but what they call the means of production is just the land. So this is how I, pondered upon this notion that my thoughts were stirring up contexts and preconceived contexts that were triggering an entire nervous system. I remember once I had a colleague that was, she was a relationship coach. And I learned, after the Me Too about the Tantra and so on and so forth. And I asked her very innocently, because she said, never show too much of yourself, never, never completely surrender or give yourself. And I was like, but my dear, what about cervical orgasms? And she was erupting like a volcano, not in an orgasmic way, in anger. And she told me, listen, it must have stirred something in me, because all she heard of is that if she would be with men, then men would try to pressure her to have an orgasm. And so, for example, not having cervical orgasm became liberation from that timeline. It became sexual liberation to not have a certain type of orgasm, because she was so stressed. And from that point, I was triggering, I don't know what. Because in my world, where we came from, it was about only discovering more of our orgasmic sense. And I did not have the hang-offs that she had about this. So to me, it was very surprising. Even I remember when I talked to psychologist. Then he asked me, "But you arrived to orgasm easily?" Up until you, yes. And so, even when I was working with essential oils or with crystals, first of all, I would have to study professionally essential oils because of the dosage, but also those were tools that were not so familiar. And they had, essential oil is such a transmutation, such a Plutonian force. And people would see, they would think, they would know in their own conception that that thing could create a recovery in timelines that they did not know to predict. So much so that they wondered if the patient was making it up. It would also stir up if they were programmed. Okay. um, so, yes, and this I would only learn when I would study aromatherapy myself. Okay, the power of reconnecting with actual nature. So the way I see it for you, the collective, that naturally when we are at the onset of the Uranus positions, okay, of the time, and the Uranus positions from Gemini begin. So what it means for many of you is that the onset of your beginning to, share your talents or show up or present yourself is scheduled. And those that try to take control of that can no longer, okay, they no longer have, in an ethical environment, not that there is such a thing, but in an ethical environment, it would be the time where the student goes out of being a student into being a teacher. That the only time where he's a student is usually from either colleagues or from his students. And okay, this is very exciting for me because I saw lemon balm, and then there is this Louisa. I call it Louisa. I don't know how it's called. It looks like weed, but it's not. And it's very exciting. It's the first plant I got when I moved after being homeless. And then she died because I did not have enough place for her. I needed to replant her. But I called her Louise, and then I was like, oh, I want to buy this now. Buy another Louisa. So this is a new plant friend. I asked my mother money for coffee, and then I didn't buy coffee, and now I buy this. um, so for you, collective, it just means that the unusualness of your own life has something to bring the world. And those that try to make you fit into their own boxes that inherently should change, okay, they are the ones that have a difficult time with you growing, because you're not growing to what they predicted, and they don't even know how to interpret you. Now, I think each and every one of us has been on either side of the equation to a certain degree. There are a lot of things that my mother would say that would jump my gun and over nothing, and I know that she has this thing that sometimes she doesn't even mean certain things. She says a word that she doesn't even know where it's from, and that would steer up an entire trajectory. Sometimes it's even nervous system hacking, which I cannot completely say because certain people really love to have the sense that they are in control. Um, so, yeah. But this is where many things get funny, and still your truth is your truth. So continuing on the trajectory, continuing on the trajectory of what I previously started to talk about. This is time where the leaves fall from the trees, and what is left is what will sustain you through the winter. And there are a lot of people that want to inject themselves into that trajectory. But they are only causing themselves the more suffering if they do so. And it's not because, how should I say that? If they're there to try to transmute your timeline to their timeline, and those timelines do not align, then they bring upon themselves suffering that they will only see with the eclipses. Because this is going to be the spring. Okay? So there are things that are set in motion now for 6 months, and now is purification from those timelines that don't fit. And those that try to attach themselves to your thread, to your tree, to take from your life energy and to funnel it to them, but they do not align, they're not compatible. They will begin to fall out. And those of them that already built something on a false timeline, okay? Now, this may be false because they misunderstood. This may be false because they came with bad intentions. This may, whatever the reason, or misinterpreted, I don't know. But those are things that are going to fall apart. And it won't sustain them through the winter to try to put you into their rubrics. And they should be extremely cautious about what measures they take. Extremely cautious. Because some of them, I said in the previous energy reading, the first episode, that there was some energy that wanted you, the collective, to feel rejection. And it's not the people that they used, it's them themselves that eventually found you loved, honored, cherished, whether it's an experience or within real relationships, I don't know. And then they try to project themselves to that timeline, and they were rejected. So they only caused themselves another experience of that rejection. Why? Because they were focused on taking action against you. Now, some of them may thought that you are into karmic relations and they were ready to be your karmic. Okay? Then it's a lesson for them that they need to honor the quality of their relation more than if they are with this or that partner. Now, if they did not really honor you and cherish you on all levels, and they should look with themselves. Maybe they need to replenish their own needs with someone that is actually there with them. Not to try to make you fit into their needs. Now those, even on a mundane level, those that do type of politics where people are supposed to fit into a box, and they funnel from the energy, from the life force of people, and then try to make them believe that they need to fight over those resources, whether it's housing, whether it's food. And so those things that were built upon the rocky foundations of trying to, and it could either be from people that thought that they got you, but they didn't, or from people that downright were nefarious and were like, I can fool this person, I can this, I can that. Okay, then basically they have to think very cautiously what steps they took against you, what was their end goal, because they may find themselves like this person that wanted you to experience rejection, and then in the utmost of when you were honored and cherished and safe, they were trying to project themselves as if to be that partner, and then they felt that rejection that they wanted you to feel. It's simply the way it works, where the energy is of one thing and it's doing something it's not meant to do, then it collapses. So, no, I know. And כן, אין בעיה. So, there are people that even went so far as to try to make it look like, let's say if you're receiving help, that you're not worthy of this help. That it goes to the wrong person. They should be, they're the ones who should be extremely cautious because they're going to need help. Okay? And they're going to need help because the trajectory they prepared for you, that they said that this person will need help, actually, in those particular places, you will reconnect with your own talents and prosperity. Do you know why they traffic people? Because they want to take from their life energy. And to take from the life energy of the people that come in contact with them. It's an energy harvesting type of profession. And those that build on that, it is built to collapse. This is how Soviet Union collapsed. Because they funneled the life energy. And they created for the people houses that they had to put carpets on the wall so not to hear the neighbors. And to them they created such big mansions and so on and so forth that the people couldn't see. And they created bunkers so that the people wouldn't be able to enjoy them. And then when people begin to wake up, we say, where's the money? We work for the nation, we put our dedication for the nation. Why are we not, why is it not yielding? That's the classified project budget going in the West right now as well. And then what happens? If something doesn't yield, a person changes trajectory. You see, I asked from my mama to money for coffee. I could buy coffee, but I much rather buy this Louisa plant, okay? There's something that grows, that brings joy, whether I use it in tea or not. There's also a plant teacher, and I can take a leaf. Okay. It's very tasty. Can take a leaf and just eat it like that. And so, yes, I think I did that on one of my videos. There was a Louisa plant growing, and then I just took a leaf and chewed on it. It's also good in tea. So, but this is where for you, the collective, those that try to bait you with things of value, but use the thing of value as bait, they're going to collapse on the time. Also, if you have residues of doing that, you will better identify it in yourself, and you will stop doing that. Okay? Now, those that try to cover up their tracks, they are going to be seen with such clarity. And I remember a while ago, there was an energy reading. It was not even mine, of somebody, and this is like the veil of ignorance. They was talking about something, and they weren't saying name, and sometimes it can even be that they didn't know the name, but they knew the behavior, the patterns, and so on and so forth. And everybody around them would know who is it, but they wouldn't. And this is the clarity, this is the level of clarity through which those that try to cover up their tracks are going to get caught red-handed. Like I said, old coping mechanisms are no longer, okay? So, and it can be that some people cannot see you accurately. Now with the moon 29 degrees, Taurus, about to approach Saturn and Uranus in conjunction. There can be unusual feelings with Moon Uranus, particularly the conjunction. Somebody could feel betrayed in an unusual way, or something can be betrayed in the sense of people betraying themselves. Not in betraying themselves like it can even, it doesn't have to be malefic, by the way. Now, the people that were masters of disguise, they might end up being seen in such clarity with this particular one. But also, if somebody was trying like to hide their feelings, they might suddenly, they might betray them. They might betray themselves, but it can also have positive meaning in that sense. Um, so those that were really relying on timelines that are incorrect, whether because they misunderstood or because they downright thought to fake or mimic or whatnot, it's not going to sustain them through the winter. And whatever measures they took against you, particularly if they tried to deprive you from resources on purpose. Okay? And again, I'm talking about people that consciously took measures to do something maliciously, okay? To try to pretend, let's say if somebody gave in assisted housing, that they don't deserve it. I saw Seizure Go talked about this. And this is because they want these people back in the trafficking schemes, whether if they were trafficked, they want them back in the trafficking. If there were attempts to traffic them, they want to try to traffic them or whatnot, because they're looking for that energy. But the thing is that when a boundary is being set as like a domino, and they better bet they're not successful, because if they're successful, even partially, it's going to collapse in even more megalithic ways. So those people that were really relying on trajectories that are not really of the light, okay, and try to make it look like something, then one of two things is going to happen. One, their scams will be even bigger exposed, because people will have to go for them. If their source was not true, then those, let's say they told somebody to check up if so-and-so receives welfare justly, then that person is targeted individual. So they say, yeah, they send this stalker and that stalker and that stalker and that person. They came up with a story and so on and so forth. Now they're not after the targeted individual, they're after the stalker. And the targeted individual doesn't know what the story of the stalker is, but they will look for what resources did that stalker take unjustly. And so one of the things that will happen is, first of all, or that they send somebody that is not a stalker, and they say, wait a second, they got money, let's say, I don't know, for mental something, but it was because they weren't believed, and they were brought through a certain process that this could have killed them, because they got to a point where they say, give me suicide, or give me, I don't know, studies or whatnot. And so to begin with, they weren't so crazy. But it's not because they fooled the system, but because they they went through a mental crisis because of what they went through. So either you, the collective, will get even bigger support, okay, a bigger trajectory, and or another thing will happen is that they will be after those who were trying to supposedly expose you, and they know it was not expose you, at least most of them. and they will be kept in check for various interests. Okay, but that would um, dissolve the blocks that you collective had that were caused by these people. I remember when I was in university, a lady saw me that I saw her as when I was working for that Real Hotel. She was Bedouin witch, Palestinian. And she told me, I know there was a curse on you. And I did think to remove curses, because at the time there was a curse on her, and I was there to listen to her. And she saw it and she removed curse. She wasn't asking for anything from me. And then she went to study, and she saw me and said, I see you now, you're studying. You have your degree, you have the place that you need to be, because there was curse that was put on you. To delay. But now for me, eventually, I would see the human trafficking in academia and I would tend to that. So of course I need to be after my Saturn return. Saturn in Scorpio, okay, in the ninth house. And it worked, that course, whatever it was only allowed because I would need to be in a certain trajectory where I stand my ground in the face of a human trafficking network, global, in academia, using dark occult that will later do false flags, but it's still occupation and genocide. Okay, many things. So, for you, the collective, certain delays, the delays that were possible were only so that you will be ready to tend and see what the trajectory was. And those that relied on you're not understanding, you're not seeing your right, you're not being, in your own lane, in the light, and so on, they need to plan for sovereignty. Because those people that came out of those timelines and those trajectories, they will try to project on you, the collective, okay, but they try to use your life energy. We'll soon find out that each sovereign life is their own. Each sovereign energy is their own. And the means that they were using to create wealth were only using what is of the essence and the signal and the energy of the people. And that awakened each and every timeline. Because to harvest the energy, they needed to maintain connection, but people were growing more sovereign. Love actually has to be loving. Sensuality actually has to be sensual consistently. And that in itself creates a different economy, different politics, different media. That they can't pull to their timeline. But they can't harm this energy because they still think to capitalize on it. And this is just why they are not successful in their endeavors. Workers don't want to work for a workplace that harvests energy from them. People don't want to do degree by academia that traffics people. They can do academic degree digitally. People don't want to go to therapy that harvests energy from them. Trying to force them under security this and security that. This is okay. This is going to cost because those people are not going to comply, and they know their rights. So those that really were reliant on all those timelines of subjugation and so on and so forth will see masses of people clearing the energy. Think about a place like a factory, okay? And they have many, many, many slaves. And they think that these people, they're full people, they're going to work and so on and so forth. And what these slaves do, they actually purify the essence of the rituals that were done on that estate. Now, the frequency is no longer compatible for what the factory was for. And see that they have to invest so much energy to try to enforce the idea that they wanted. That they ran out of energy. The only time when people feel overcome by forces that seem to be overwhelming is where they're not aware of the power and or they're not aware of why is it happening or what does that other side wants. And in result, what's being exposed is the very trajectories, the deepest secrets that even those people might not all know about themselves. Why? Because they try to subjugate, they try to control, they try to keep something secret, and all of the secrets came out. They try to keep someone isolated, their message went viral. They try to keep someone from being supported. Unless they comply with trafficking timelines, they lost all of their support. What happened during COVID? The Great Resignation. Everybody opened their own business. Then everybody had Illuminati in the DM. Then everybody became informed.